that
Could
kind of
we
thing.
start identifying those men who clearly have penises as women? Can we just decide that now? Can we refer to them as trans women?
Not only that, I'm mandating that you refer to them as trans
I'm
women.
mandating. Like, no, ma'am. We know you're not going to get physical. Just stop getting so red-faced, ma'am. You know,
I do agree with Dr. Peterson. That seems to...
because that would be my path.
Yeah.
If you asked me to do that, I would say, oh, well, what if this person did X, Y, and Z to me or mine?
Yeah, right.
Then he's lucky I let him keep the leg, right?
Right,
you know,
right,
it's easy to get there.
No, I was thinking more of the torture routine, you know, where there's no motivation for it, except whatever.
Complete sadism. It's hard to get into that.
That's got to be a lot harder to convince yourself that you could do it. Like, it's the same like Nazi guard tower kind of thing.
That's what it was. And I was reading about that sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
So
true sadism disgusts me in a way that I have a hard time making that understanding true sadism, just the enjoyment of inflicting pain upon another. Like, it really disgusts me in a way that's hard to...
Right. Well, believe me, I felt the same way.
That is the other to me. You know, like those people, those aren't people anymore by my definition. The people who have lost that ability, those are the people who need to be stepped on by like snakes.
Right.
And much more likely to survive, and much more useful in, say, a village or a smaller community in our past. That guy who's thinks of himself as a bit of a villain. Maybe he's not very nice to his own people, but it's about what he does to the enemies, right? Like if my tribe is clashing with yours, it might not be enough that we just go and conduct warfare. We may need a villain in charge who says, no, we're going in there tonight, and we're going to cut all the throats, and we're going to take all the women, and then they'll deal on our terms.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, you need a Vlad the Impaler out there with those bodies on spikes, so that the invaders don't make it all the way to your castle, in a way. It does seem like that resentment. And then, like, ironically, those guys who are just the, quote, nice guy to the women, eventually they come around, and I think every man has seen this with friends, they come around to resent women because they go, I'm putting all of these tokens into women, and I'm not getting my sex deposit. Like, what's going on? And then
they flip spectrums. They go from the one end of the spectrum to the other. Those are the guys you see spouting like the most disgusting, like, vitriol toward females online. Like every woman is this, every woman is that. When I do this, I get that. Look at what they choose instead of someone like me. It's only because of these flaws that are inherent to females. Look how flawed the female race is. Fuck them.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
you know,
I agree. And then I do think that that's most characteristic of men who do the raping orangutan routine unsuccessfully, and then they take it out on women. And I think that one of the problems with confused women is that they can't distinguish between those mean men and men with true authority and power. Because they conflate the meanness with the authority and power, and then what? Go ahead.
With the orangutans, the males who appear to be more like females, do the females buy into that? I guess is my clue. Do the females see these males as one of them?
No,
like, I don't
have
know
to rape
what
them.
I don't know what their social hierarchy is like, but I imagine like big male with the leather thing on his neck. He's over there on his own doing his thing, and then up in the trees, it's like the females and the beta males. Do the females sort of see the beta males and interact with them as if they are females?
Orangutans are more solitary than other great apes. So first of all, I would say less is known about their social arrangements, but they're much less social than the bonobos and the chimps and the gorillas. So if you're interested in that, there's a great book called Demonic Males by Richard Wrangham and Peterson. I don't remember Peterson's first name, might be Chris, but it's Wrangham anyways. And it's a great book. I mean, it's a wonderful romp through primatology. And another guy that's really worth reading is Franz de Waal, who wrote, I think it's called Chimpanzee Politics, and he's looked at partly the biological basis of morality. That's one way of thinking about it.
It's a healthy dose of truth that a lot of people haven't heard before, but I think at least what you do is you talk about the issues, you talk about the problems, and then you break down why they are issues and problems. You really delineate this thing down to the causes, the root causalities, and sometimes it's evolutionary, sometimes it's genetic, sometimes it's biochemical. You try to get to why people are feeling these ways about these things, and then say, hey, look, you don't like that homosexual man there for the same reason your ancestor was afraid of a snake. He's not an outsider. He doesn't have any fangs. Let's think about what's inside you that's making you feel that bit of like fear and anger, and the other sort of thing is coming up right now. Because I feel like if you look at that hard enough, it'll dissolve. It'll dissolve like an Alka-Seltzer away in your mind. We've got kind of a global audience, and so we end up dealing with people occasionally in friendly little conversations from all around the world. And I was speaking to a guy from Sweden the other night, and we were all playing this video game where there are 4 of us, and we can all communicate while we play our game. And someone said to him, how do you feel about Sweden? Haven't the Muslims taken over? And I thought the guy was going to be like, you're so ignorant. You don't know anything about my country. Where are you from? But instead he goes, it's pretty rough. We just don't go out at certain times. There's neighborhoods you don't go to because that's their neighborhood. And, around New Year's, we know better than to go down to that part of it. And I'm like, whoa, really? Like there was no hate or vitriol in this man's voice. He wasn't like, it wasn't like he fired up some redneck and said, what about the blacks? And he just went into a tirade of ignorance and stereotypes. Like, no, this guy was like, well, the immigration has caused these factors, and this is how we get around them now so that we can all live together. And I was like, oh, God, that doesn't sound like I would enjoy that very much if I were this person.
Yeah, well,
saw that when Martin Luther hammered some stuff on a door a long time ago, and the Protestants and the Catholics just went their separate ways. And I mean, there's been some rough feelings over the years, I suppose, but no generational wars that I can think of. I mean, right? And that's how it's being enforced right now. That's what ISIS is all about. They've established a religious caliphate, across the borders of two countries. It's no less separation. About when I think of religion.
Yep. Sorry.
When I think of like the Christian religion and how it's applied here in my home state of Georgia, it's when we go to church and we tithe, that has very little to do with politics at all. There's this huge, massive separation between religion and politics for the most part in the U.S. There are moments of ambiguity and tempers flare over a monument on this piece of property or no, but that's as stiff as it gets. Like the scariest bit of that I can remember, some drunk fellow ran over a monument for the 10 Commandments a few months ago and tipped it over. Like that's what happens when. But
like to your point, like never, like if you're not a Christian, Kyle, and you're Christian kind of alcove there in Georgia, no one ever is going to come to you and say you have to pay a different rate of taxes. You have to go to different stores. You have to.
The religious law will not be enforced as a law. I'm not going to lose any hands if I can. The Bible has many restrictions that it places on Christians, and I ignore all of them virtually. But I know there's no religious police to come and kick my door in and drag me away and torture me and threaten my family and
it's not it's also there's other
I've heard you speak on like the failures of communism and socialism, Marxism, governments and that sort of thing. Have you ever heard about it? I'm sure you've heard about the cannibalism that took place in the Soviet Union, something called the Holodomor in the Ukraine.
That was Ukraine. Well, that was only 6 million Ukrainians.
Is that all?
Yeah, hell, why teach that in school?
I believe that is referred to as as the most widespread case of cannibalism in mankind's history. From what I understand, there's photographs of like a mother and father and their children's bodies in front of them on the table, butchered. The heads are there.
Yeah, well, it was about as brutal as it could get. Yeah, that was the first major failure of, it was the first overwhelming failure of the communist revolution. Yeah, it was.
It had. I feel like it was worth it every step of the way. Rather than if I'm thankful that my ancestors, such that they were, fought that Cold War, such that it was, so that I'm not under the yoke of some horrible. That this country wasn't contaminated by that sort of mindset that leads to ruin and failure and poverty.
Yeah, it's.
And I think And because of that, I feel like that if you are an outlier, if you are a literal genius and your aspirations are military, wow, the doors are open, eh? If you go in there, and you're scoring 35 points higher than the mean average, and they're like, oh, well, we're going to find something special for you to do, young man.
There's no doubt about that. They're very good at that. Like they do a pretty Silicon Valley geniuses keep complexifying our life. That problem is going to become more and more paramount.
Exacerbated. It's coming every day. It's worse and worse. If you rewound 150 years, Phil, that all of those guys with those 87 IQs, first of all, they're not that far below the standard deviation anymore. And second of all, like, those are railroad workers. Those are farmers. They don't need to fold anything to a millimeter. They need to hit that railroad spike hard all day. And that was a good paying job. I feel like all of those manual labors, man muscle, the jobs that took advantage of the fact that a man was more muscular and physically powerful, like 85% of those are gone. And
even that, though, like if you're really, really dumb